WWE Elimination Chamber is coming up this Sunday. It is the second to last event on the road to WrestleMania. We still have Fastlane coming up next month. The Chamber pay-per-view has produced some pretty good matches over the years. I was just watching some highlights earlier of the one from 2 years ago where Bray Wyatt, in case people forgot, yes, Bray Wyatt, believe it or not, was WWE Champion once before. And the match where he won the championship, the Chamber match, actually one of the more exciting ones. One of my favorite Chamber matches they've ever done. So I'm hoping we get a couple of good ones this weekend. I will have a full review of the show up on the YouTube channel late Sunday night, early Monday morning, as I normally do after all of the pay-per-views. So for those of you wondering, you can catch the review on YouTube as always. So let's get right into it here. We'll run through a preview of the show, give some predictions, just so you guys know I'm recording this on Wednesday night. So we're still about 4 days or so out from the pay-per-view. I fully expect that they'll probably add at least one more match, probably a kickoff match, probably a tag team title match for the Raw brand, if I had to guess. So it is Wednesday night as I am recording this, just FYI. We have Buddy Murphy defending the Cruiserweight Championship against Akira Tozawa. And if I had to take a guess, this will be the kickoff match or one of the kickoff matches. That's usually the way they treat the Cruiserweight title, unfortunately. Tozawa became the number one contender. He beat Cedric Alexander, Lio Rush, and Humberto Carrillo in a fatal four-way elimination match 2 weeks ago. This week on 205 Live, I actually did catch some of 205 Live this week. And there was a hell of a no DQ match on this show involving Noam Dar that I would actually tell all of you it's worth going out of your way to see. But on 205 Live this week, they had a contract signing. Backstage, it was officiated by Drake Maverick, the GM. And I like this format. I'm watching this and I'm thinking to myself, man, I like this format so much better than the tired, let's get in the ring and we'll do it in front of the crowd. And, when they sort of venture outside the ring and they do things in the back or in other locations, change things up a little bit, I tend to like it a little bit more. They did that one contract signing backstage last year on SmackDown before one of the pay-per-views where AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura were wrestling for the championship. This would have been sometime after WrestleMania. And they did it in the back. And I don't even know that you necessarily heard the crowd, but the way they shot that I thought was brilliant. So I just happened to think that this was a pretty good segment they had on Tuesday night. But it's all a moot point anyway, because I don't think Tozawa is winning the titles, so I think Buddy Murphy retains. I see no reason to take the championship off of him. And for all the success, the short-lived success so far that Mustafa Ali, and I'm going to talk about him in a little bit, but for all the success he's had in a short period of time on the main roster, Buddy Murphy is another one who before long, I would say in a matter of months, should end up on Raw or SmackDown. He is good enough to hang with the big boys on the big shows. And who knows, we have this international shakeup coming up in April. Maybe he'll be shaken off of 205 Live and onto one of the main brands. But I think he retains here. We have Braun Strowman taking on Baron Corbin, now in a no disqualification match. It pains my soul that this feud is still going on. They have already cooled off Strowman enough. The last thing this guy needs is a loss to Baron Corbin. I think Strowman wins. But where Corbin goes, so too does Drew McIntyre. And if we see Drew, that probably means we see Kurt Angle. And now that it's no DQ, I think it's a given that we're going to have some kind of interference here. But if Strowman's going to do the job for either one of these guys, and maybe he won't, but if he is, it should be McIntyre at WrestleMania. It should not be Baron Corbin at the Elimination Chamber. So I'm picking Strowman to win. We have an Elimination Chamber match to crown all new women's tag team champions. Not first-time women's tag team champions. I saw that phrasing on WWE.com. Show some respect to the Jumping Bomb Angels. The Jumping Bomb Angels in their day would have embarrassed half of the teams in this match. I mean, hell, they might embarrass them today. We have Sasha Banks and Bayley, the Iconics, Nia Jax and Tamina, the Riot Squad, Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville, and Carmella and Naomi. They are your teams in this match. Sasha and Bayley will start the match, as well as Mandy and Sonya. By virtue of their losses on TV this week, they will open the match. The WrestleVotes account on Twitter claims to have a source that told them that the brand split is effectively going to be coming to an end for the women in WWE. I'm not necessarily with the men, but for the women, for all intents and purposes, it is likely coming to an end. Now, we've already seen Charlotte, we've seen Becky Lynch go back and forth between Raw and SmackDown ever since the Royal Rumble. I think it's the right move, if it's true. If the story is true, I think it's the right move. There simply are not enough women right now on either roster, especially SmackDown. And this has been a big problem for the SmackDown brand for a long time, that the depth they have on that women's roster just isn't there. And to really keep things interesting, I think this is a necessary move. You could say the same thing about the men's tag team division on both shows, especially Raw. But you could say the same thing about the men's tag team divisions. I'm all in favor of crossing over. I was not in favor of bringing the brand split back to begin with. You guys know that. It has its benefits. You want to weigh the pros and cons, having a brand split, not having a brand split. There are arguments to be made on both sides. I'm not saying it has no benefit whatsoever. I'm not saying it can't be exciting if you know what you're doing. I've just never been a fan of it. I've never been a fan of the way WWE does it. They've never fully, truly honored it and made it a real brand split. I'm just not a fan of it. Now, they're having a draft in April. They've already announced. So it's not fully going away. But for the women, again, I think it's a good move. And if this is true, maybe there is something to the idea of some kind of a women's championship unification. There's been rumors of that maybe for WrestleMania. I haven't heard a lot of that lately, but there have been people for the longest time now, last few months, speculating, hey, maybe it's going to be Becky and Ronda, champion versus champion, or Charlotte and Ronda, and the Raw women's title and the SmackDown women's title would be on the line. And, lately it certainly doesn't look like that's the case, but maybe there's something to that. If they move forward with these plans, maybe they would have Asuka drop the title to Charlotte on television sometime before Mania just to get that title into the main event. Maybe, and I think if anything, this would be more likely, maybe they would set up a WrestleMania 30 type of scenario, and I don't think that's ideal just because WrestleMania 30 wasn't even that long ago. If you're gonna borrow some of your own ideas, I would want to space things out a little bit more, but maybe they go with the WrestleMania 30 scenario and they force Becky, in light of what happened on TV this week with the suspension and everything, and they want to have her really fight for it. That's sort of what they're going for with that storyline. Maybe the McMahons force Becky to have to go through Asuka at the start of WrestleMania in the opening match to earn herself a spot in the main event with Charlotte and Ronda Rousey. They force her to do it Daniel Bryan style. And if the championship is on the line, the SmackDown women's title, maybe she wins it from Asuka in the opening match. Then the Raw title is on the line. The SmackDown title is on the line. I have no doubt that the final scene of WrestleMania will be Becky Lynch celebrating a win. Maybe it ends up being with both the Raw and the SmackDown women's titles. It would at least make sense. It would at least make sense then that they had Becky, who is their hottest performer on television right now, Raw or SmackDown. Whether you like what they're doing with her, whether you're a Becky Lynch fan or not, she certainly has been positioned, and the reactions that she's been getting, she is the hottest star on either brand right now. And when you compare it to past eras and stuff, we can get into that whole thing. Where she ranks on that scale probably isn't very high, but certainly for this period now, she's very popular. And they had her not just lose to Asuka at the Royal Rumble, they had her tap out. There was no interference, there was no debate, there was no she passed out. She tapped out to a woman who has not been seen since the Royal Rumble. For all we know, Asuka was kidnapped in the parking lot outside of Chase Field. Nobody's seen her. But yet they had Becky Lynch tap out to Asuka. You would certainly think they have something up their sleeve for Asuka. You would hope. Well, maybe that's the plan. Maybe they did it so that when the McMahons tell Becky that, hey, you've got to beat Asuka to get into the main event, they can point to the fact that she already tapped out once just to plant that doubt in people's minds. Can she do it? But the fact is, if the women are going to be appearing on both shows, if that is the plan going forward, there is no need to have two separate singles women's championships. Especially when you have a SmackDown Women's Champion who hasn't been seen in 3 weeks. One singles title, one set of tag team belts that float between the shows is all that you need. As far as the Chamber match is concerned, I think it's a lock that Sasha and Bayley are going to win the titles here. I mean, I look at the lineup here, and if I had to pick a dark horse, you could say that maybe they make Sasha and Bayley go to WrestleMania. They have to beat Nia and Tamina, but I think it happens here. I think it's a lock. Sasha and Bayley, they're going to open the match. They're fighting from behind. You've got plus the story of Sasha and her injuries, which I'm sure they'll play up on commentary in this match. She's been cleared, but she's been suffering from injuries, supposedly a shoulder injury. These titles were made for these two women, and I think it's going to make for a great moment when they finally win them. After an entire year of nothing. It was a lost year for Sasha and Bayley. This is their moment. This is their crowning moment here. And the other reason why I say that they win here instead of WrestleMania, and this is just my opinion, and a lot of people are not going to like hearing this, but I believe, as far as, well, who do they defend against at WrestleMania? Let's say they win. Who do they defend against on the biggest show of the year? I posted a tweet yesterday. Total Bellas is sinking like a stone in the ratings. Each episode this season so far, there's been 4 or 5 episodes. Each episode has done less viewers than the one before it. Which means don't be surprised to see Nikki and Brie back on television very soon. And if they are, I think it's going to be Sasha and Bayley defending those tag team titles at WrestleMania against the Bella Twins. We have Finn Balor challenging Bobby Lashley and Lio Rush. It's a handicap match for the Intercontinental Championship. I think it's too early to put the title on Balor. I think you wait until WrestleMania. You do it one-on-one. None of this handicap nonsense. You go one-on-one, Balor and Lashley, and Balor wins the championship. It just doesn't happen on this show. So I'm picking Bobby Lashley and Lio Rush. We have the Usos challenging Shane McMahon and The Miz for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. They did a McMiz TV segment. Is that what they were calling it, I think, right? McMiz. Sounds like something that is only available for a few weeks at McDonald's that you can buy for $1. So we had McMiz TV on Tuesday night with the Usos, and the Usos were excellent. I mean, they always are in these types of segments. Promo-wise, the Usos are great. But one of the takeaways from that segment was that the Usos, in talking about themselves and being a tag team, one of the takeaways was that the Usos sometimes bathe together. Not just as kids. They bathe together to this very day because they're twins. I didn't know that was a rule. Miz appeared to be disgusted by this revelation, and I'm watching this, and it just reminded me of this just one of the great coke-filled promos of the Macho Man's career, way back when, long before his WWE days, in the early 80s, back when he was still working for his father's ICW promotion. That was the Poffo family promotion. He was teaming at the time. His tag team partner was Cowboy Bob Orton. Cowboy Bob and the Macho Man were a tag team. And I'll never forget watching this thing. It's like a minute long, just like some kind of backstage or in-studio stand-up promo that they did. Savage looked like Hillbilly Jim in this segment. He had the fisherman's hat, big scruffy beard. And they were just talking about a match that was coming up. I think it was against Pat Patterson and Ray Stevens. And Savage is talking about how he and the Cowboy, they do everything together. We ride together. We train together. We even... And then he just sort of laughs. Like, I'm like, I don't even need to know what that means. I don't want to know what the means. Don't even want to know. But this Shane-Miz alliance is not going to last much longer. It can't. It can't. It's only a matter of time before there is a miscommunication of some kind. I'm not saying it's been this long-standing plan when someone's going to turn on each other. It's probably some kind of miscommunication. Things start to go downhill. And it all just falls apart. The only question is, does it happen on this show, or do they keep the belts on them until Fastlane? I say the beginning of the end starts here. I predict the Usos will win back the tag team titles. Another thing to consider here is that their deals, their contracts, are said to be expiring in April. They have not yet signed new deals. They are negotiating with WWE as we speak, kind of like AJ Styles is. And we know the Revival asked for their release not too long ago, and now they're the Raw Tag Team Champions. I think the Usos get the belts back here. We have Ronda Rousey defending her Raw Women's Championship against Ruby Riott. There is absolutely zero chance that Ronda Rousey loses her title to Ruby Riott, or that Ruby Riott becomes the first person to beat Ronda Rousey in a one-on-one singles match. Zero. Goose egg. Now, I admit, many, many years ago on the Sound Off, I answered a mailbag question. Somebody asked me, what are the chances that we will see a match someday between John Cena and The Rock? Because John Cena had been calling The Rock out in the media. This is when The Rock was in that period where he wasn't working with WWE. Many years had gone by, he hadn't wrestled. And I believe my exact answer was, there is less than 0% chance of that happening. One of my all-time great flubs. So, hey, maybe I'm wrong. But I don't think that there is a snowball's chance in hell is what Ruby Riott has of winning this match. Now, Ruby, I have to say this about her. Ruby has impressed, I think, since coming up to the main roster. She's put in some really good matches. When she was in NXT, she was a babyface. She wasn't part of a faction. There really wasn't a whole lot to her. She had a unique look, but she did nothing for me. I mean, she could wrestle, but there was nothing terribly exciting about her matches. She was one of the big surprises to me when she was called up and they made her a heel and she had her own faction. And she started to wrestle people like Sasha Banks and some of the other stars on the brand. And she was cranking out really good matches. So Ruby is really good. And I'm not saying, I think one day she'll make a fine women's champion. But that's not happening anytime soon. Ronda Rousey retains. We know Charlotte. She said on SmackDown she's going to be front row. She has stolen Becky Lynch's spot for now. At WrestleMania, she has promised to be front row and center for Ronda's match at the pay-per-view. So we'll see what happens there. But yes, Ronda will retain her championship. And finally, we have an Elimination Chamber match for the WWE Championship. The new Daniel Bryan. Look, can I just say something here? I made a comment a few weeks ago about these ridiculous nicknames and monikers that they give some of these people. When Daniel Bryan got eliminated from the gauntlet match on SmackDown, which was awesome, and I'll get to that in a second, when he was eliminated, they actually had, was it Greg Hamilton? See the ring announcer? They had him announce that, not just that Daniel Bryan was eliminated, he had to say, the new Daniel Bryan has been eliminated. Who talks like that? Who talks like that? The new Daniel Bryan has been eliminated. Well, thank you. Thank you for clarifying. I thought the old Daniel Bryan had been eliminated. Just sounded so stupid. Well, anyway, the new Daniel Bryan defends the WWE Championship, his wood belt, don't tell Kevin Dunn, against AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Randy Orton, Jeff Hardy, and Kofi Kingston, replacing the injured Mustafa Ali. Mustafa Ali is all banged up right now. He reportedly suffered a concussion, and of course he got that nasty black eye last week after having his face stomped on by Randy Orton. The same Randy Orton who, by virtue of swooping in and winning the gauntlet match on SmackDown in the final 10 seconds, will now have the luxury of entering the chamber last. So he will be the last one out of the pod on Sunday. So to go back to SmackDown here, Mustafa Ali is out, and Kofi Kingston is put in his place. And they were having a gauntlet match, as I mentioned, to determine who would enter in the last position in the chamber match on Sunday. Well, Kofi Kingston opened the gauntlet against the champion, Daniel Bryan. And they went probably, I think it was close to 25 minutes that these two wrestled. And it was very good, and he pinned the WWE champion. Kofi Kingston pinned Daniel Bryan and eliminated him. First one out of the gauntlet was Daniel Bryan. From there, Kofi went on to beat Jeff Hardy. He went on to beat Samoa Joe. He pinned Joe with the Bret Hart, Roddy Piper kick off the turnbuckle finish from WrestleMania 8. Joe killed him afterwards, of course. Can't let that go unavenged. AJ Styles was in next. It was at this point when Tom Phillips, 50 minutes or so into this match, wasn't over yet, makes the comment. He says that this might be the longest that anybody has wrestled a match in SmackDown history. Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar would like to have a word with you, Tom. What is with these commentators? You had Corey Graves at the Royal Rumble talking about how Ric Flair once in 1992 entered the Royal Rumble at number 1 to win the championship, which is not true. Now we have Tom Phillips talking about how 50 minutes into this match, and Kofi Kingston, hey, he may have the record here. Longest match, longest performance in SmackDown history. Let's forget the hour-long Iron Man match that we had all those many years ago with two men, no less, who are still in the company and actively wrestling. Anyway, that's the I know that's the nerd in me going back many. I still think that it should mean something. I think that your announcer should know that sort of thing. I don't think that's asking too much. AJ Styles and Kofi Kingston, they did have a match. It was great while it lasted. Kofi tapped out to the calf crusher. That was just past the 1 hour mark. So 60 minutes. Kofi Kingston lasted 60 minutes here in this gauntlet. For all the praise that Seth Rollins got last year for going the distance in that Raw gauntlet, I think Kofi deserves the same praise here. It was a hell of a performance. Maybe the best night of his career. And with AJ waiting for Randy Orton to come out, Orton was going to be the last one into the gauntlet. Orton hit him with an RKO from behind, out of nowhere, and pinned AJ to win. So, not a bad day at the office for young Randall. Arrive, RKO, and leave. And with that, he gets to enter the chamber last on Sunday. Orton retweeted a fan after the show, this like a Randy Orton super fan. I don't know if they're as bad as the Alexa Bliss or Bella Twins or, God forbid, even TNA diehards, but a Randy Orton superfan tweeted him and claimed that with his win here on the show, Orton is now third all-time for most TV matches in WWE history with 746 matches under his belt. Up next, in the number 2 spot, is The Big Show with 798 matches. This person did not mention who is currently in first place. My guess, it's got to be Kane. It's got to be Kane, right? It's got to be. Kane holds all the records. Doesn't Kane hold the record for just most matches, period? I could have sworn like a year or two ago there was some kind of TV record that this guy set. He used to hold the record for eliminations in the Royal Rumble until Roman Reigns came along and he screwed the whole thing up. So you look at the end of this gauntlet on TV and you wonder, does Orton pinning Styles the way that he did, is that the first seed planted for a WrestleMania match? Because, look, I love AJ, but at the same time, I'm kind of over the whole AJ versus Daniel Bryan WWE title match deal. Unless AJ wins the championship, on this show, which I don't think he is, he doesn't have any obvious match or obvious opponent for WrestleMania. He and Randy Orton have never had a proper program. They've had 1 or 2 matches on TV over the last couple of years. They've never had any kind of a pay-per-view program, pay-per-view match. So you could be looking at Randy Orton against AJ Styles just one-on-one at WrestleMania this year. That could have been the first shot fired. Now, I have to assume, I don't know this, But I have to assume, because Mustafa Ali, to my knowledge, I believe he was at TV. He was being evaluated. I'm sure he's just gutted they wouldn't medically clear him. And there was still some hope up until Tuesday that they might clear him and he might be able to wrestle, and then ultimately he was not. I have to assume plans were already set, and the Iron Man spot in that gauntlet that went to Kofi Kingston was originally intended for Mustafa Ali. And which makes me really sad for Ali, because here he is getting the biggest push of his life, and he gets hurt. Now, if it would have been him pinning Daniel Bryan after, let's say, a 20-minute match to open the gauntlet, it would have made even more sense for him, even if he then lost at the Chamber. Let's say Randy Orton eliminated him or Samoa Joe eliminated him. Anybody but Bryan. Okay? But if Ali had pinned Bryan here on this show, it would have made sense post-Elimination Chamber for him to say, look, I deserve a one-on-one match with Daniel Bryan for the championship because I have a win. Not only do I have a win, I have multiple wins over this man. 2 pinfall victories over the champion he would have had, including that one tag team match. So I wonder if that was the plan. I wonder if that was the story they were going for, and then it would have possibly built to a championship match between Bryan and Ali. Maybe not at WrestleMania. I know that was the idea that I had pitched. But even at Fastlane, maybe it's just like a buffer until WrestleMania, you could have gotten away with doing Mustafa Ali against Daniel Bryan. But I guess, who knows? Who knows if that was the plan or not? I tend to think it probably was. And, look, I like a good underdog story. I think with the right person, it can work really well. I'm a big fan of that. But you know what's every bit as good? You know what works as good as a good underdog story? A good grizzled veteran story, which is what they did with Kofi Kingston. Now, Kofi's also an underdog, but he's the veteran guy who has been on the main roster now for 11 years. And he has never won a world championship. Kofi Kingston has never won the big one. He's been a tag team champion. I believe he's been both an IC and a US champion. But he has never been a world champion or a universal champion. On either show, he's never won the big one. I would not mind seeing Kofi Kingston get the shock win and become WWE champion, even if he then goes and drops it back to Bryan a month later at Fastlane, which he probably would. Because there ain't no way that Kofi Kingston is going into WrestleMania as the champion. But, to give him a short run with the belt, I don't think would hurt. Who does it hurt? Years ago, they did Jerry the King Lawler against The Miz on this very same pay-per-view, Elimination Chamber, back in 2011. They had a match for the WWE Championship, and I wanted them badly to put the title on Lawler because they were telling the story with Lawler. He had been feuding for a couple months with Miz, and, even though he's older and everything, Lawler is still very good. At that time, he was still... Look, he's been doing this for 50,000 years. I mean, he's very good at this pro wrestling thing. And they were telling this good story, and I said, give him a short token run with the championship. Lawler was never treated as anything serious in the ring in his WWE career. Obviously, in Memphis, he was a big deal for so long. But in WWE, he was never really highlighted or pushed seriously as a wrestler. And yet, all these years later, as an announcer and babyface announcer, people would cheer for him, and they still cheer for him. He's got this big following. Why not? Why not give Jerry Lawler, who held all these different championships in his career and never any in WWE, give him a token win and a token run with the championship? He wouldn't take the title to WrestleMania. Or maybe he would and drop it there. But my thought was, why not? Why not? He and Miz had this great TLC match on television not too long before that. But they didn't do it. Miz won, because Miz was the young guy they were pushing. So Miz won. They wanted to keep him strong going into his WrestleMania match, his crappy WrestleMania match with John Cena. But they thought about it. I remember at the time, reportedly, they did consider, Vince McMahon did seriously consider putting the championship on Jerry Lawler. They opted against doing it. they could very easily consider doing the same thing here with Kofi Kingston. But my prediction remains the same as it's been for the last few weeks since they announced this match. I don't see them taking the title off of Bryan before WrestleMania. I just don't see it. I think Daniel Bryan retains. And maybe it does come down to him and Kofi. With, what a dramatic finish that could be. But I think what we're looking at here is 2012 all over again. It came down that year to a very unlikely final. World Heavyweight Championship on the line, heel champion Daniel Bryan, and Santino Marella, who, if I remember correctly, I think Santino was also a replacement for somebody who was injured. It might have been Randy Orton, actually, who was hurt. So Santino was the backup. He was never supposed to be in the Chamber match, and it came down to Bryan and Santino, and I remember the crowd. They were so into... Santino was over anyway, but usually he's in the comedy segment. This was a freaking Elimination Chamber match for the World Heavyweight Championship, and people so badly wanted to see this guy win the title. Why? Because, first of all, when you have somebody who you genuinely like, you want them to win, but people dig the underdog story. It just works. You need the right person for it, but it just works. And then Daniel Bryan tapped him out in the LeBell Lock, and he broke everybody's heart. But I think that's the kind of situation we're looking for here. I think we see the same scenario play out this year, only it's Kofi Kingston in the same role that Santino had been in. But the sad part of this is that if Kofi were to win the championship in this match, he should win it off of his own merits. But the argument is going to be that the only reason they put the title on him is because it's Black History Month. It's the month of February. We've got Bobby Lashley as the Intercontinental Champion. We've got R-Truth as the United States Champion. And you know what? Those people would not necessarily be wrong. I think they would have every right to question WWE's motives in doing something like that. It's not like they haven't pulled that kind of stuff before. I mean, look, if after 11 years they give this guy a token run now, this month, I think you would be right to think that this company has ulterior motives in doing something like that. Even though Kofi has busted his ass for years, and I think he would be quite deserving, even if it was just a short run. At the very least, I think Kofi needs to avenge what Randy Orton did to him 10 years ago and eliminate this guy from the Chamber match. That's what even though it's probably going to be AJ Styles getting revenge on Orton if they are setting up something between them either at Fastlane or WrestleMania. But boy, it would be kind of sweet if Kofi got some kind of revenge on this SOB for what he did. If you can believe it, it's been a decade since Kofi hit the boom drop on Orton in Madison Square Garden. And then, of course, later on, Orton called Kofi stupid, killed his push. At least let the man get rid of Orton in this match. But anybody who's getting excited that this may finally be Kofi's time, man, he had this great performance on SmackDown on Tuesday night. He has been just underrated for so long. Maybe WWE is finally waking up. Maybe they're finally going to push this guy as a serious single star. All I can say is keep dreaming. I hate to burst your bubble, but it's not happening. Don't allow yourself to be fooled by what's going on here. Look, this has happened with other people before. And you allow yourself to think, well, maybe this is it. Maybe he's finally going to get a push. Maybe he's finally going to become champion. Maybe they're finally going to put some muscle behind this guy. And then invariably, they disappoint you. Because it's just not in the cards for these people. Some of these people have been with the company over 10 years. It's like they're old hat. And they're not somebody that is a priority for this company. They're not somebody they're going to focus on. But they kind of tease you and they allow you to think that, well, maybe finally this person is going to get their shot. And then they kick you in the nuts. Don't let them do that to you. Look at this for what it is. He lucked into a spot that was never intended for him. This was never meant for him. That is the reality. So no, I don't think this is the beginning of some kind of giant Kofi Kingston push. If WWE has not treated Kofi Kingston like a credible contender in 11 years, what makes you think that they're finally going to do it now? They had credible contenders last year in Braun Strowman for the Universal title and Samoa Joe for the WWE Championship, and they dropped the ball. How many times? I lost count of how many times Joe lost to AJ Styles. And he was in a far better position than Kofi Kingston or some of these other people to be the champion and get a run and carry the ball. And they didn't do it. But you think they're suddenly going to push Kofi Kingston? Are you new here? Maybe if he threatens to leave and go to AEW, then maybe all of a sudden he'll find himself getting a big push. Maybe that's the strategy here. You know, Steve from Dover where he didn't say. Could be Dover, Delaware. Could be Dover, UK. This guy could be anywhere. But he listens to the podcast. He sent me an email. And he pitched the idea of having the chamber match come down to Daniel Bryan and Kofi Kingston. Big E and Xavier Woods would be outside the chamber, you know, to kind of counter Rowan and make sure that he doesn't interfere and he doesn't get involved. Somehow, though, Luke Harper returned. Now, Luke Harper was backstage or at SmackDown television this week. I don't know if he's officially cleared or not. I believe he is. He should be coming back very soon. You would have to think there's a pretty good chance he'll be affiliated with Rowan and Bryan in some way, maybe even aligned. But anyway, in his in Steve's email, he was proposing that it comes down to those two. You've got Big E and Kofi outside to counter Rowan. Somehow Luke Harper returns and gets inside the chamber. He helps Daniel Bryan retain the title. And that then would set up a 6-man tag team match for Fastlane with the New Day against the hipsters, as he calls them, with the stipulation that if the New Day wins, Kofi will get a one-on-one championship match with Bryan at WrestleMania. I think that would be a great idea. Kofi wouldn't win, but I think it would be a great idea, probably a great match. But the reality is Kofi Kingston is not getting a title match at WrestleMania any more than for all the people who mocked me for even the mere suggestion that Mustafa Ali somehow would get a championship match at WrestleMania, even though I at least tried to put forth some storyline sense and that he's pinned Bryan before. I guess now Kofi has too. So you can make the argument that he should get the shot. But it is no more or less ridiculous than the Mustafa Ali idea in that it's probably not going to happen. I know it's pie in the sky, but probably not going to happen. Kofi Kingston ain't going to WrestleMania to wrestle for or defend a championship. It's just not happening. It's nice to think about. Would be nice for him. I always dig a good underdog story. It ain't happening. I think there's a better chance that Kevin Owens is the guy to fight Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania. Kevin Owens was back on Raw this week in a vignette. They were showing him out bowling with his family. I'd rather watch 3 hours of Kevin Owens bowling than watch Monday Night Raw. But they showed him, he's out bowling with his family. He says he's about a month away from coming back. He doesn't know if he's going to go to Raw or SmackDown. And it sure does look like he's coming back as a babyface. Babyface family man Kevin Owens. I think he goes to SmackDown. I think he's the one to challenge Bryan for the championship at WrestleMania. In any event, Bryan will retain here. That's your Elimination Chamber lineup as of Wednesday night here as I am recording this. I fully expect them to add another match. Again, maybe a rematch from Raw, the Revival defending the tag team titles against Glorious Gable, which would fly in the face of their no more automatic rematches rule. But since when do rules matter in this company? They just make them up as they go along. If you want to chat during the pay-per-view, I am on Twitter at Solomonster, especially if the show is maybe not too exciting. I feel like sometimes we kind of keep each other interested by interacting on there. I'll have a review up very early Monday morning on YouTube, a few hours after the pay-per-view goes off the air. You can grab the audio if you prefer. As always, from the link in the video description. You can always find a link to the MP3 in the video description. That's it. I'm out of here. I got to go use my own Elimination Chamber right now. And I will see you guys on Sunday for episode 586, and then later on that night on YouTube. Take care, guys.